my name's Ishmael and today we're going to be talking about a refurb. I'm going to run you through a live walkthrough, or rather a walkthrough I did of a property which I have done a refurb on. Now I'm going to point out things that I have picked up in the survey, and I'll point out things that maybe weren't picked up at the initial outset but were later issues, which is why I'm going to be able to highlight them, of things you need to look for, things you might miss, and things that you haven't looked for and you wouldn't even believe were issues. So, as you can see from the front of the property, it's a bit dirty. Now, I wouldn't worry too much about the dirt because that can all be washed off. But as you can see as you walk inside the property, there is some mould inside, quite a lot of mould. Now the question is, where is it coming from? Well, as you saw on the outside, there was a beam going across. And after looking around, you can see that it's all near the front of the property. It's all around the front. So the property looks generally in quite good condition. It needed all the floors pulling out and general painting and decorating. But as you can see, it's very bad mould around the very front of the property, which was all coming from the supporting lintel. Now it may have been able to be fixed, which was the original plan, to reseal the lintel in and fix it all up. However, when we came to taking a lintel out, there was a bit of an issue. And it didn't quite go to plan, and because of that, we actually had to, after we power washed the front, we found that the pointing was actually a lot worse than it looked, and it pulled a lot of the pointing out, so we had to actually go and re-point the front of the house. As you may have noticed, all the doors are fire doors. Now, fire doors can be a good thing, cannot be a good thing. And this room, as you can see, is a very small living room, so we've had to open that two rooms up in this ground floor and therefore allow the living room to be a lot bigger and lose the fourth bedroom. Now with the fire doors, there was a question whether I should take the fire doors off because some of them had a bit of damage on, or whether I should fix up these fire doors. It turns out that I decided to fix them up and paint them, and they look much better now. So as you can see, a bit more damp upstairs. That was obviously a roof leak. Now with it being 2 stories at the front, 3 stories at the back, that could have been a very expensive fix. Here, more damp around the back, more roofing problems. Now, we had to, ideally, you would have had scaffolding up, but we didn't. Now in here, you can't see, but underneath the floor, there is actually damp issues. Now the damp issues are coming from that lintel. As you can see, there's no damp issues in this bedroom, which means the lintel is where it was coming from, and nowhere else at the moment. The property looks in a generally okay condition, as you can see, but it's not great. So the damp issues is really, if you wanted just to fix up the damp issues and keep the rest of the property as it was, you could probably get away with that, and you could probably keep the property in an okay standard. But I decided I want to go for high end. So as you can see, again, no real damp issues in this room above the lintel, which is gone. So we determined that it was the lintel. Again, a bit of damage, wear and tear on the property, nothing much. There was damp underneath the floorboards, again, nothing much. Just the standard stuff. Now, there was no window board, which became an issue at a later date because the window board wouldn't actually fit because of the thickness of the window board and how close the window board was actually to the window when it opened. So we had to actually get an extra thin window board and reface the front of the window board. So as you go downstairs, you can see that the previous tenant has just flying kicked down the stairs into the wall, or just ran down the stairs into the wall on both staircases. So again, as you go into the kitchen, it looks like a reasonably okay kitchen. However, when you open the doors, you find that all the doors are peeling, and on pictures it looks great, but when you go in, it's not. Back of the house, again, reveals are very wet. There was damp behind that door which you couldn't see, damp on the walls which you couldn't see, all coming from upstairs. Now this took a very long time to dry. So it took a very long time to dry because of the height of the property. As you can see, garden, again, very, very dirty, very disgusting, full of rubbish, no good. So that had to be tidied out. Apparently it was all going to be taken away, it wasn't. So refencing, retidying the garden. As you can see, back of the property, bit dirty, bit bad, bit damp. So that's a run through of the property and pretty much everything there was to do with the property. So basically, effectively, what I'm saying is that the property had quite a lot of damp issues. Visibly on pictures, they didn't show any of the damp, which means that the property was priced a little bit below market value, but it looked okay condition, and people weren't buying it because of all the damp issues. But they didn't even view it, a lot of people. I mean, I wasn't going to view this property. However, the estate agent came along and they told me, view this property, if you're looking for a refurb, this is a good one for you. I looked at the pictures, no damp, kitchen looked okay, bathroom looked okay, looked like it had flooring, but when I went round, all the flooring was peeling up because it had been damp and it was cheap quality flooring, so it was all swollen and peeling apart. The bathroom was okay condition, it really just needed regrouting. And the kitchen, well, the cupboard doors, you may have got away with just changing the doors on the kitchen. The worktop wasn't even too bad. There was very slight swelling around the sink, but again, that you may not have even had to change because some properties are a lot worse than that. So if you really wanted a cheap refurb, you wouldn't even have to change that. Otherwise, I could have changed the cupboard doors and the worktop, but I went all out. So I'll run through what I've actually done in another video where I actually show the finished product of this particular property. Now, as you can tell, this property may have overran on budget because, yes, I budgeted for fixing up the front of the house and fixing up the roof repairs. However, it wasn't quite that simple because I found that although I thought at the back of the house, because it was just around the windows, that the back was leaking just around the windows because it had no sealant on the window frames, which I've seen that before, where the sealant goes on the window frame and the water hammers into the window and it just goes straight through the sealant, straight into the house, and the window reveals get soaked. That's what I assumed was happening because it was only around the back windows that had no sealant in. However, when I came to inspect it more, I found it was a roof leak, which obviously cost me a bit more than I expected. So my contingency went there. Also, because of the front of the property, which I thought the front of the property had a nice finish, the stonework looked good, no damage, the joints in the render looked okay. Okay, they weren't perfect, but they were not dented, so it looked like it was usable. But because it was so dirty, because the gutter was leaking on the join, all I needed to do is refit the gutter together and that fixed that problem. But because it was so dirty, I decided I wanted to power wash the front of the house. Or in fact, the entire house I power washed. But the problem was, when I finished the power washing, they had pulled out the mortar joints, which meant that the gaps between the bricks were now exposed and gaps into the house, which actually probably caused more leaks than at the beginning. So these are issues that you may need to account for. Are the mortar joints as strong as you think? Maybe you'll find they look good, but they're not that strong. So maybe go along with a key and just poke the mortar joints and see if the mortar joints are actually soft, crumbly, or if they're actually hard. Because they may be soft and crumbly, they may be hard, but you need to make sure you know what they are, because that will determine whether you're going to have to repoint the front. Now, the builder I used, I would never use again. No names mentioned. I had a lot of issues. However, he told me that for him at least, it was cheaper for me to use him to re-render the entire front of the building than to just do the pointing. So I did the entire front of the building. But that obviously added a lot of costs which I had not accounted for, thousands of pounds, which I had not accounted for to re-render the front of the building. So these are things you need to look for. If you like my video, subscribe to my channel, whack that bell notification icon to get notified of videos coming out each and every week. Make sure you keep up to date, because if you want to know more about building and renovation projects, whack a comment below. I'm happy to explain more details about individual parts of developments, individual parts of renovations, costs of each part of the renovation. If you wish me to go through an example of a kitchen, of a bathroom, of flooring, if you wish me to go through any of those, drop a comment below. I'll do my best to help you, and I'll catch you next week.